welcome to the Andy Social Podcast. My name is Andy Dowling, and this week's shout out, straight into it, guys. Each and every week, if you're new to the podcast, I thank somebody that supports me, Andy Social, Self-Starter, Lord, whatever it might be, in a range of different ways. It could be leaving a review somewhere on the internet, it could be buying some merchandise, it could be shouting me a beer via the PayPal button over at andysocial.net, it could be a message of encouragement, it could be some social media love, it could be a guest suggestion, whatever it is, small or big, it all adds up. It fuels my fire, keeps me motivated. So thank you so much for all the support so far. But this week's shout out is for Dan Brown from Wollongong. Now, I've only just discovered Dan just recently, but he messaged on the Facebook page giving some praise and talking up the podcast. But he explained that he discovered the podcast from the Matt Mora episode from last year, Matt Mora from Mortal Sin, and he's been tuning in ever since. And out of that, he actually discovered Lord, and he's going to come and see the band at Steel Assassins November 3rd at the Bullface Stag in Sydney. So that was pretty cool. I thought that was awesome. The podcast is working. It's cross-pollinating. I love that term. And it's attracting more people to the band and to me, so that's fantastic. And another cool thing that Dan explained was he actually discovered Desecrator from the episode with Riley Strong as well. So really, really cool to see that the podcast is actually helping a lot of the guests that have been on the show previously as well. So thanks so much, Dan, for the feedback, the positive comments, and also great to see that you're discovering some really, really cool stuff from the podcast as well. So thanks so much. When you hear this, shoot me a message. I'm going to flick you out some stuff in the post because, you know, guys, we all love getting something in the post. So thanks, Dan. Really appreciate the support. And thanks to everybody else that continues to support this podcast. All right, folks, you know the drill. I play bass in the Australian metal band Lord. And if you love a bit of metal and you haven't heard us yet, go over to lord.net.au. We sound a little bit like Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, Queensryche, Halloween, a bit of Symphony X, thanks to Mark. And or if you haven't heard of any of those bands, still go over to lord.net.au. There's heaps of music over there, lots of streaming tunes, video clips, historical stuff. A great way to discover the band. Really, really cool website. So go over to lord.net.au and check it out. Let me know what you think. In addition to playing in Lord, I also host the Self-Starter podcast, which is all about small business, self-employment, and freelancing. So if that's something that is of interest to you, you can go to selfstarter.com.au or search for Self-Starter in the podcast player that you're listening to this through right now. This week's episode is with Peter Maxwell Slattery. Now, guys, I'm not going to beat around the bush. I am a hard skeptic. I have a bullshit meter that runs red hot most of the time, and I'm quick to call people out. So this was a new one for me. But one thing that this podcast has shown me over the years is that it's put me in uncomfortable situations. It's taken me out of my comfort zone. I've spoken to people that I never thought I would ever speak to for varying reasons. But this takes it a step further because I've never really had anybody on the podcast that's really, really challenged any of my beliefs or any of my views on life or whatever it is. So Peter came as a recommendation from one of you guys, Daniel from Melbourne. So props to Daniel for giving me the suggestion. But to begin with, I was a little bit resistant. I thought, nah, no way. I'm not going to have Peter on the podcast. I don't believe in any of this stuff. No way. But I paused for a moment and I dug in a little bit deeper and I read up and looked at his website, which is really, really impressive. And I thought, you know what? Let's give it a go. Let's reach out and see if he's keen to have a chat. So Peter is an author. He's a rap artist, but he's also an extraterrestrial contact experiencer. Yeah, guys, no shit. And he also runs an organization with his wife, which is called ASETI Australia. Now, ASETI stands for Enlightened Contact with Extraterrestrial Intelligence. So this is going outside the comfort zone, guys. But I was really impressed with Peter's work ethic. His website's really, really cool. He's got so much content, and you guys know I run the Self-Starter podcast as well, and that's all about, taking the initiative, creating something, creating your own business, and I was really impressed from that perspective. It really struck a chord with me. And speaking to Peter, I was really, really impressed. Like, he's a really pleasant guy. I really enjoyed chatting to him. He had such a soft approach with his views, and he understood that a lot of people would not necessarily believe in the things that he believes in. And look, I didn't walk away from that conversation any different with my views, but I really had an additional level of respect for Peter. And, whatever your views are and whatever you believe in, that's completely up to you. And I like Peter's approach with just the way that he communicated with me anyway. But I'm really impressed with a lot of his hard work that he puts into what he does and what he believes in. So, guys, strap in. This is a bit of a wild ride. There were certainly moments along the way where I thought, oh God, I don't know where we're going to go next with this. Like, I don't know what he's going to say next. But it was a really, really cool chat. I really enjoyed chatting to him, and I hope you guys get something out of this. Whatever your beliefs are, it was just a pleasant conversation. I really enjoyed it, and I'm stoked that Peter is one of many interesting people that have been on the podcast so far, and I'll certainly have many more interesting people to come in future episodes as well. So, petermaxwellslattery.com, but I'm going to put a whole bunch of videos, photos, links, resources, everything will be in the show notes, as always, over at andysocial.net. But for now, as I said, strap yourselves in. Please enjoy this really, really enjoyable episode with Peter Maxwell Slattery.
So it is really weird because originally I was, I played guitar and sang as a kid, and my experiences started as a kid as well. And then I was a drummer in a lot of heavy metal bands during my teenage years. And I got right into music. And so I drifted into that area for a while. I was a bit of a wild one, hanging out with a lot of sort of groups and gangs, and sort of could walk into any place because I had friends everywhere. But I put a lot of my energy in my youth into my music, and now I've done over 16 albums going into sort of rap rock sort of stuff. And then I moved to the Gold Coast for a while, and then everything sort of collapsed and I had to go back to my hometown. Or that's what, just the way things happened for me. It was like things weren't working. So when I went back to Albury, I started having experiences, and then all of a sudden I started documenting these experiences, talking to researchers, and all of a sudden, books came from them, basically from logging my experiences, and documentaries came from it as well. It was just logging my experiences. I kept on getting told, document everything that's going on, because it's important to add to this that I've only been in Melbourne now for nearly 4 years, and I've had about 300 people have experiences at my house. We've had Japanese TV fly here and have experiences. Yeah. We've had investigators come here. We've had people from that's worked on aerospace craft and planes that have come here and had experiences. I've even had a person from he was former British Air Force, now he's British Aerospace. He's actually validated the evidence I've put forth in terms of photographic and video evidence. And I've also had Jaime Maussan's group, who's the former man for 60 Minutes in Mexico, do the same, and Japanese TV do the same as well. So it's sort of like to put a brand on all this. I don't know what's happened, because all I know is that I'm the one living this, and a lot of the time I don't see what everyone else sees because I'm in the thick of it. And my wife is having experiences as well, and is one of the top psychics in the world, and that's sort of how we met through this stuff. So our family's experiencing it, our friends are experiencing it, and all I'm trying to do is document, log it, get out the information, which is why I had a podcast a while. It was like a sort of a show, YouTube show I did for a while, to just get out people's experiences, because it's not just happening to me. There is so many people from all walks of life, and there's over 550 military witnesses and people that are connected to corporations in the USA that are contracting to the military that have been willing to step forward in front of Congress. And this was the biggest National Press Club conference actually funded by the White House going back in 2001, where over 550 military witnesses are willing to come forward and testify to Congress with ground radar, above ground radar, video testimony, videographic evidence, and all types of physical samples and other things to prove that we are not alone in the universe and that we have been visited. And that's what I sort of point to, because, I'm just some normal average dude, but when you've got people with this background, it does bring a big twist into it, especially when these people have had higher clearances than the US president to push the nuclear button when it comes down to if you had to or not, because as the US president learns, and I've learned in time, that they're not at the top of the chain as well. And so I've talked to a theologian for the Pope, one of the president's family, great-granddaughter, and this seems to be far wide-reaching across all cultural backgrounds. And I've even worked with the King of Australia, known as Ulukai Brendan Murray, whose great-great-great-grandfather, I believe, signed the Batman Treaty with the British Empire to lease the land, which they never got back. And we've been doing a lot of work that sort of correlates with the information I've been putting out, which also goes to the Gosford Glyphs near Sydney, which actually the Egyptian people working with the pyramids there have even came and looked at them. And these Egyptian glyphs, one wall's Egyptian, the other wall they say is Pleiadian, with information on how humans got here on a rock that was brought 100 kilometres away that they can't explain how it was brought there. And there's a whole ancient structure that predates the Egyptian pyramids themselves, I think, if I've got that information correct. So the more I've gone into this and the more the information, these entities, these beings that I've had communication with and it's ongoing, the more I look into it and I've put out the information, there's been, and I hate to say prophecies, but there's certain things, information they've given me, and then years later, science has sort of backed it up and it's been sort of confirmed later on after the fact, which I don't care if people believe it or not, but it sort of gives myself validity to myself that I'm not going insane, because it's very, what I could say, multidimensional, these experiences, how they happen, how they come about.
Man, like, where do I start with that? I mean, you certainly, just through, I guess, your experiences, you've gone down this rabbit hole of so much stuff that you've discovered along the way, just purely, as you said before, by just documenting things as you experience them. So from a really sort of, very innocent point of view of just going, well, I'm experiencing this stuff, so I'm going to document it best I can along the way in different ways. And then it's attracting all these people that are bringing extra information along the way. But I guess the question I've got, and just to take a step back a bit, is, I mean, can you recall what that first experience was? And I mean, is that something that you're able to share just to get a bit of an understanding of, I guess, where it started from?
Well, where it started was when I was a child, and I've documented it that it had to have been between the ages of 8 and 12 in this specific home with my mother and stepfather. And I would wake up to what people would call, well, it was weird because it sort of overlaps back and forth, but what I used to see was, and I didn't talk about this much until recently, but I would see Kurt Cobain walk into my room and that would be it. And then one day I started to see Kurt Cobain walk into my room and it was vibrating. I saw, if you can imagine like a human being walk into your room, and Kurt Cobain, the singer of Nirvana, I'm sure a lot of your podcast listeners would know that.
Absolutely.
And they'll use images and things that they can ease you into the experience so you can deal with it. And I was a big fan of Nirvana at that age. So I'd see him walk in the room, and I mean at night time, so it would be dark, but there was enough sort of light that I could see who it was. And over time, I would see it vibrate between Kurt Cobain and what we could call the typical greys. But these guys were like a white colour, and if you can imagine cigarette ash and hitting it with your pinky finger, that sort of texture,
yeah,
that's what these guys had, with huge black almond eyes, and they were, like, one of them anyway was leaning over me. Now, over time, I used to turn away with the sheet over my head and I could see light coming through the outside of the curtain. Now, if that was a craft outside or if it was the sun coming up, I don't know, but no idea, but I think it was more a light from something else because it was really bright when I would see it. So in my books, I talked about one or two of these experiences, but over time, more and more, you put things together. But what was even trippier was probably about 3 years ago, I'm describing this with my partner in my mum's house, showing her where everything happened. And my brother walked in and he said, and they used to hold my hand and walk me on the craft. And I'm like, what are you talking about, dude? And see, he's 5 years older than me, never talked about his experiences. And I'm telling him the beings that I'm seeing in there to my girlfriend. It might have been when I had friends there, I can't remember exactly, but I was showing people what happened at Mum's house while Mum was there. And my brother happened to be there, and he just walked in on us and said, they used to hold my hand and walk me on the craft, the dudes you're talking about. And I'm like, dude, we've gone all these years. And mind you, this is, like I said, between the ages of 8 and 12. Mm. And here I am now, and at that time I was probably 30 or 31. And so I was like, that's another piece of the puzzle, but I didn't know what they were. I didn't think they were aliens. I didn't think they were angels. I didn't know what they were at that stage, this specific type of being. when I was 12, so as I said, all this happened between 8 and 12, but when I was 12, I know for a fact that I was 12 at the time that I could pin it back to. I saw my first craft in a suburb called Lovington in Albury, and it was this massive, you know the weights on the end of a dumbbell when you're doing weights, how a weight looks? If you grabbed one of them and put it sideways, it's sort of like a disc, but it looked more like a weight put horizontally. This was like a dark matte grey, and no word of a lie, even to this day, I've tried referencing it. This thing looked like it was about 3 times the size of a football oval.
Wow.
Like massive. And it cut in front of Red Light Hill. And to this day, I don't know if anybody else saw it, you know, but that's what I saw. And then over a period of, you know, my teenage years and that, things sort of died down, but I just had paranormal stuff happen. Like I'll just see a shoe fly across the room or a curtain lift up, but, you know, there was no breeze or anything coming through. Just weird stuff happened, and I got involved with the paranormal side of things, just looking into investigating it and things like that. Just sort of dabbled in it because I was experiencing all this weird stuff. But later, did I get to know that, you know, all this was connected. And then, you know, I had UFO sightings for a while, but then it wasn't probably until about 2010 where things hicked up, going between 2010 and 2012, when I sort of got acquainted with all this stuff again. So that's sort of it in a bit of a nutshell.
Yeah, I mean, far out. I mean, I've never, well, not that I'm ever aware of that I've had these types of experiences, but I think just getting a gist of, and just, I guess, scratching the surface of, you know, your history and your story, it appears that there's this sort of stuff just from your experience and who you've talked to it's far more common than what a lot of people may think. And I guess I'm curious, like, as you've gotten older over the years, and as you said, you're piecing things together. I mean, how was, what was the interpretation of all this sort of stuff that was happening? Was there any thoughts about what this is, why this is happening to you, or why you're experiencing these things? Were you getting anything out of this where you thought, you know, is there a particular message here or anything that you're sort of interpreting? I mean, it's such a unique thing from my perspective anyway.
It was hard, and it still is. Like, in some ways, it absolutely destroyed my life. Like, I ended up on a Sunrise and on the news, all because I tried to get this information out, asking, you know, I had the air services, I had footage that I sent the Australian Air Services, and they're telling me there was no helicopter or plane in the air at the time. And I'm like, well, I've got 3 videos here that show otherwise, and I want to know what the hell's going on. And I started to get more and more paranormal activity in the house. So, like, in some aspects, like you hear about the Matrix, and this is a good analogy. Do you want the red pill or the blue pill? Because I'm telling you now, once you have the red pill, you will see a greater reality for what things are, but you can't go back. And when you can't go back, you question everything from whether it's politics, your insanity, whatever you think of, you question it and you analyse it from 10 different ways, because you start to see how things have been manipulated here on some aspect, but that we also create our reality through our consciousness and project that from outside of ourselves. And this is sort of the core message to the information I've got is, one, remember who I am, and that we're all one consciousness interacting with itself, and that we create our reality, and it's a projection from inside ourselves, outside of this projection of ourselves anyway. So it does come down to a conscious aspect. And I've been able to, because there has been beings that have been what I would call of service mode and self-service mode, and I've seen things and experienced things that are very dark, and I've also experienced things that have taken me to what I call the geometric light realms, which surpasses extraterrestrials. I would sort of use extraterrestrials as bait in the UFOs in terms of what they did to me, using that as bait, because some of these beings are from other star systems, constellations, planets. Some of them are from suns and stars, and some of them are actually from a vibrational frequency that surpasses all this in an interplane, which is a blueprint of one consciousness, which is all the universes connected together with its own interplanes. And they've showed me that that's God or consciousness, and that's one cell of a greater consciousness with all these other universes with the same stuff going on that's going on here. And I had to stop there, because in a human mind, I couldn't go past that when I was actually shown all this. It was so much to absorb in the human mind, because I was connected to this body at the time, because sometimes they'll rip you out of your body in spirit form, and sometimes they'll take you physically. It sort of depends on the entities or beings or spirits that you're interacting with. So it's very layered.
It's almost like, I mean, just listening to your descriptions and how you're explaining it, and just given what's happened earlier in your life as well, it's almost like you're a beacon in a way for a lot of this stuff. Like obviously, as you said before, when you moved to Melbourne and over the last 4 years, you've met all these other people that have had these experiences as well. But do you feel, I mean, I don't know how many people are out there like you that are spreading this information in this particular way, and it just seems like, I don't know, like you're a particular magnet for these experiences.
Yes and no. I believe, like, I've talked to people from every background. I've talked to people in the Australian military, the US military, all around the world. I've talked to police officers, truck drivers, ambulance officers, you name, lawyers, judges, you name it. I've spoken to these people from all walks of life, to the richest people, to the poorest people, to any coloured, skin. It does not matter. It is far-reaching and wide-reaching, and all stories from all ancient cultures go back to either the Pleiades or Orion or Sirius as well, which is funny enough. So in some way, I was shown that I'm somebody to help hold space for people to be able to experience this.
Yeah.
Which is one thing. But then what usually happens is people will never have an experience and come and see me, and then they'll have something happen, and then it seems to ignite them and spark their flame, and they start to have stuff happening, all the time. And so it's not me, but I just seem to be able to help those people that haven't had stuff happen sort of ignite it, and it just ends up happening for them, which is part of their journey.
I'm going to jump all over the place because it's particular things along the way sort of linked to different things that you're involved with. But I guess just on that last topic, you've co-founded, is it shi-ji Australia?
Yeah, my wife and I have shi-ji Australia, which is Enlightened Contact with Extra-terrestrial Intelligence. And we're about to go back to America to do conferences at the shi-ji Ranch. And it was founded by a bloke called James Gilliland, who at the time he was a real estate dude in, I think, the California type area. And he was very successful, rich, and he was surfing one day, got smashed by a wave, and it was all documented on the news and that. I think like a 21-foot wave came out of nowhere and smashed him, and he died. And he was taken to a place where I've been taken as well, which is funny enough when we spoke about this. And he calls it the Golden Plane of Bliss, which, if you can imagine what a galaxy looks like, but sort of like this goldish white, all these stars, but it's like an energy. He was taken there, and he was shown that this is what source is, that we're all connected to it, or consciousness. And he was brought up in a Catholic background, this and that, and it asked him what he wanted to do, and he's like, well, can I go back? And it's gone, well, as you wish. And he's like, I want to go back and teach people the true nature of God, of what, of this. And so he was smashed back in his body and coughed up a heap of water. And all of a sudden, he was, he was on the TV naming date, times and magnitudes of earthquakes that happened. And this actually I've been doing it for the last year. And it's documented, even the Burke Street Mall and Federation Square with the guy running over people. I said that was something like that was going to happen on American radio. And then I said it's going to happen within the month. And that did happen the way I said it was going to happen. So he's been like a mentor to me for helping me work out what's going on with me. But this dude, he started having all these experiences and could read people's, like he could look at you or can look at you and read your past life, future lives, everything about you, and he can heal things about you if you needed healing, if you were open to it. And he's been on Good Morning America, everything you name it, he's been on. And he's got international best-selling books on this sort of stuff, as I do as well. But the dude's like 60, I think 67 now, or 65, something like that. And what happened was, after a few years, he was told he's going to get a property, and he ended up getting this property, like they said, and he was having a bath there one day, and he was ripped out of body, and he was put on a craft with these beings from the Orion constellation, which we call the Source Spin here in Australia. And he was smashed back in his body after a communication with them, and then all of a sudden his sisters are yelling out, asking them, did he see the massive UFO over the house? And he realised that this is real, and that the spirits from the angelic realm and all these beings that he was interacting with, they weren't just spirits or everything, he was thinking it like it was at the time. He realised that some of these beings were extraterrestrials. And now people flock there in the thousands, like Robbie Williams, Dan Aykroyd, all these people go there and they've filmed UFOs themselves and seen them.
Wow.
And so we found out about each other and we hit it off. And, so I ended up, just hanging out with him for a few weeks. He ended up coming here and we did a 3-month tour around Australia. And I just ended up going, he said, just do what you do. But he said, you can do it under my umbrella because he's got a huge following. And it's just to spread the word of, basically, that we're all God. We're all an expression of God, whether you believe in extraterrestrials or religion, whatever. And it's to spread a message that people should not be looking externally, but they should be looking within and realising that they're a facet of God themselves.
Yeah, I was gonna mention that because I read on the website a lot of it's around that public awareness of that reality, of the ET reality, but then there's also that aspect of it's a bit of a personal development aspect to it in a way. And as you said, and it's, when you articulate in a way that you did, it makes complete sense. We need to stop being distracted by what's outside of us and looking inside, and whether that be on the plane of where you're coming from, or just, I guess, your general everyday person, you should always be looking, inside and finding answers and working through life and making the most of your life and not being distracted or being overwhelmed by what's outside. So even that on the surface makes complete sense to me. So I was intrigued because there's obviously a lot of development and you're trying to help a lot of people along the way through what you've experienced and what you've learnt and the people that you've come in contact with over the years, including this particular guy from the United States as well.
Definitely. And, like I've said to people as well, but, I'll be the last to convince anyone about my experiences or this reality. They've just got to do the research and really look at it from a non-biased and neutral point of view, and they'll come to their own conclusions no matter what that may be. But, either way, like I say to people, if they'll give the shirt off their back to help their fellow human, they really don't even need to know any of this because they're just a good person already. That's the thing is... And once this sort of floodgate opens to this, is quite crazy indeed.
One question that, especially with the people that you meet in your travels, and you mentioned going around the country for 3 months and meeting a lot of different people. Are you finding? You sort of alluded to this a couple of times, but I just wanted to sort of clarify. You mentioned that a lot of these types of things are happening everywhere, and the more you dig, the more you understand that this is not defined to one culture or one part of the world, the East or the West or anything like that. It's something that is worldly. It's across the entire globe. But the people that you personally come in contact with in your travels, is there any sort of consistency as far as story or anything that you see that is a link with these particular people that are having experiences to you? Like, are they, I don't know. Is it like, I'm always looking for like trends, and I'm looking for links to see, like, trying to make sense of things. And sometimes I'm a little bit too rational for my own good, and I don't trust intuition and things like that. But I'm just wondering, is there any observations that you see along the way in your travels?
There is. Now, they come in many different forms, but a lot of it is like people have always known that they're not from here, even though it sounds stupid. A lot of people always feel that their parents aren't their real parents. And it's not like physically, they're their parents, but they just don't feel like that they're their parents. They always feel like they're the odd one out. They look at how humanity treat each other and are actually sickened by it. They hate injustices to other people. And to like what humanity does to itself. So there seems to be these things that you can ask them, and they will always tick the box on each one of those things, and they'll always know things before they happen, or they'll get thoughts or images of things before they happen, and they always happen. So what we call this is, and it took me a while to work this out after talking to people like Mary Rodwell, who's been doing hypnotherapy on people around the world, had over 3,000 clients. And they've all said pretty much the same sort of story with what I've just said to you. They just know they're not from here. And so this is usually a connection to your soul. You've got like a connection to your soul essence that has had experiences on other star systems and other planets and other dimensions. And when you come here, sometimes those traits are basically bleeding in on a soul level. And it's like you've woken up in a video game, meaning 3D Earth reality, here right now, you and I are talking, and you're like, what the hell's going on? And then you're put in a box to work inside a box, whether you're at work or wherever, and you're put in a control system, and you're like, this is not right. And this is one of the reasons why we're here to have the human experience, is to break that pattern and open up everyone's consciousness and do it together, because there's a manipulation that's gone on to make that happen. But to get back to your question, there is a lot of consistencies, whether it's with what I just said or whether it's with UFO sightings, how people have a UFO sighting, or whether it's like, you know, I woke up in the middle of the night and there was these beings at the end of my bed, and they're describing the beings, and or you'll talk to people about on the crafts, and you're describing how there's no corners, how everything's rounded, it almost looks like a mother of pearl mushroom type luminescence, light going through it, like an effect on the wall. Like, because some of these crafts are living. They're actually organic light. They're made out of light. They're not metal, though some of them are. It depends on what the crafts are. So you do find a whole wide range of things like that. Even how people are brought together. My partner and I were connected through having experiences, but then there's people I've met in person, and we knew each other from being on the craft.
Wow.
There's a person I know, or a couple of people in America now. One of them is Barry Littleton, one of my friends, and he went into work one day, and I went in to see his dad at work one day. Now, Barry's probably about 40, give or take now, and he went into his dad's work, and there at the time, I don't think this bloke worked there, but he worked in one of the offices there, if I've got it correct, and this bloke is an aerospace engineer, Bill, and I had them both on my old show, and they recognised each other straight away. And Bill's about 20, 30 years older than Barry, and they recognised each other from being on the craft.
Wow.
And this dude was an aerospace engineer, Bill, the older bloke. And so these types of things, like I've seen a lot of people on the craft and then met him in person, and you describe everything to a T, and you just get shivers, because you go, this wasn't, how the hell could this be a dream? How do I know what they look like? How have we got the same information? And how can we describe everything from the crafts to the beings to the information exactly the same? We've never met each other. And you know what I mean? This is, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it blows your mind, I mean, to hear these stories. And when you come into contact with these people and you share these experiences, and then these really sort of, well, I guess it's probably the perfect word to these otherworldly experiences with people, like, you know, rekindling some connection that you didn't really realize was there until you see that person, as one particular example. But I mean, what does everybody do with this information as you're exchanging? And I know that there's going back to the organization itself and spreading awareness and spreading, you know, the positive aspects of what people are experiencing. But I mean, how do you all sort of process this information together and work together? I mean, is it just more of a case of just discussing it in a public domain so the word gets out there?
Sometimes it is. I've sort of withdrawn a lot. This is like the second interview I've done in a year. It's a lot to bear on your life, your family life, and your friends. And at the same time, so many people have got a thirst to know what we know as well. And that's why I've put nearly everything out there. Even my international best-selling books, people can even download the PDF version for free. Everything I've got's for free. So I'm not really making money. It's not a business, you know, unless people buy a paperback version or they get one of my CDs or something off iTunes. I'm not making anything off of this, really. It's more for the awareness. But, you know, coming back to your question, what do? You know, with some of this, you end up in tears, you're happy, you laugh, you know, because it's very emotional. You know, this is, some people think, you know, this is just a whole made-up thing, but this has been my life. And my dad was a police officer for 38 years, and he didn't know what to do with it. Now he's seen stuff with me as well as my whole family. Even at our wedding last year, we had I think probably 16 crafts that we had the whole wedding see. Even during the day, I had a documentary crew, film crew here that are making a film now that possibly could be getting on Netflix, a feature film.
Wow. And
nearly every time they've come here, they've filmed stuff during the day with me and seeing the activity, whether at day or night time. And when I said it was going to happen recently, we were in Italy, flying over there for Japanese TV, and at the exact time and location, we filmed the craft for 20 minutes, going at unbelievable speeds and manoeuvres and changing shape and going back and forth on itself. And what do you do with this, you know? Like, what can you do with this? But I guess, talk, document, share, and just be open-minded to hear responses. And usually what it is it's more food for thought for others than myself, because it opens them up in some way, I guess, to just the mysteries about our reality, which I guess just expand your mind just thinking about, if this is true, what if? So really, besides that sort of thing, it's more of a therapy, I guess, for all of us experiences, being able to share and just talk about this, because it is sort of hard to have your day-to-day life because you really want to help people, but at the same time you're sort of stuck in a 3D way of things and thinking and work and 9 to 5 and all that, and you're going through this going, this isn't meant to be like this here. And you know that part of your experiences in time go to that sort of information that, things should be a lot better here on planet Earth than what they are. And one person can't change the world, but it's sort of a group consciousness that's got to do it. And I guess just playing my part, sharing my information is sort of part of the journey of why I've incarnated here at this time.
Yeah, I mean, having all these experiences, and I guess sort of touching on what you said earlier, I mean, just trying to begin to understand some of the feelings that you'd have, but I mean, another word for what you described. Pardon me, what you described before was, simulation. So, like, how could you go by your day-to-day in what you may at times perceive as a simulation when you're experiencing so much more? And I think no doubt that'd be really difficult. And I was going to ask you as well about how you manage, a lot of potential criticism from other people, because you have put yourself out there, you put your name against it, and at least from the outside, you portray a level of confidence in the way that you communicate and putting everything out there when other people might be too scared to do it. And I was curious to understand, how you've dealt with that over the years and how you deal with it now. And is it something that gets easier with time when you're better managing, the potential criticism or the vulnerability of putting yourself out there?
Yeah, I've sort of learned to just as long as I tell it like it is, and I start to just be me while doing it, because for so long I didn't want to talk about my rap history or, my history as a youth, because I've been open about my sexual abuse as a kid, and I've been open about my drug history. And the thing is, too, I had my doctor ask me up here, he said, can you write about your experiences just a page for me? And I said, well, how about 10 books? And he didn't know what to say.
Well.
And he said, when did your experiences started? And I said, between 8 and 12. So unless I was doing drugs between 8 and 12, these aren't drug induced. And I said, by the way, I've got over 2,500 videos and photos now with hundreds of witnesses. So unless we're having like a joint hallucination and the camera, what can you do with it? And they were very fascinated with me. But, when it all sort of hit the news and everything, it was very hard, especially in my hometown of Albury, where I was from. My best friends I'm still best friends with, since childhood. But, a lot of people thought I was loopy, lost it. Even to this day, I still get hate mail, sometimes daily, sometimes it's weekly. It just sort of goes on and off. And, you got to detach from that and have loving detachment for them people, because, again, I want people to be skeptical, because the problem with society is that we blind believe a lot of the time, whether it's people blindly believing the politicians or religions. This is why we're in the predicament and situation we're in now, because they blindly believe an establishment with no basis. I've got more evidence to prove that this reality exists than they do for the Bible or whatever else they want to put up when it comes to a court of law. I've got the witnesses, I've got the evidence, I've even got physical trace evidence they haven't produced yet, but I've got that, and I've had people work with me. But it's been hard, and again, I've come to the conclusion that if people don't want to believe me, that's fine. I just don't want them to be mean to me about it, because I'm not mean to them. But at the same time, like I said, if they'll give the shit off their back to be, just being a good human being, they don't need to know this. But it has been hard, but I've just come to learn that, when you're going against the grain, this is going to happen. There's going to be friction. And, again, like you and I wouldn't even be talking now if this was just a known reality, because there would be no use for it, because everyone would know that this exists and they'd be open to it. So I was sort of naive, thinking, in the beginning I wanted to tell everyone about it, and the military witnesses and all the evidence. And then I just realised nobody cares. Like, the only people that care are the people that have experiences or that are open-minded enough to want to listen and learn about this, because it's very intriguing, and maybe it sort of answers some things about their own consciousness and experience here as an Earth human. So, you know, I've learned to get a tough skin from it, and, you know, I just take each day as it comes. And, you know, when you're having these experiences daily as well, like, this is every day something happens to me. Every single day, and my partner, we experiences it every day as well. You know, when you're going between that and then you've got a family life with children, and then you've got work and all this going on, it's never a dull moment, but you've just really got to breathe and just take it as it comes. And emotionally, it's got a lot easier over time, because, you know, again, you're dealing, you know, I'm a human being. People think that I'm some freaking whatever they want to think of me as, whether it's a good thing or bad, but, you know, I'm exactly like you. I feel, I hurt, I have good times, I have bad times, I've got friends, I have, you know, all the emotions everyone else does. And again, it's part of the self-mastery experience here to learn to deal with your emotions and be more observant of them rather than reactionary.
Yeah, I know a bit about that with from a mindfulness point of view, and you know, I think there's a lot of things that, no doubt, you know, from adversity comes a lot of positive aspects of growth, and I think just you know, you touching on some of those things that have been in your past and what you experience even now on a day-to-day basis. I mean, you know, probably a lack of a better descriptive word, but, you know, you live an intensive life. I mean, you've as you said, there's never a dull moment. There's always something coming your way, whether it be positive or negative. And, you know, as you said, you've got to sort of deal with it as it comes and just roll with it. But no doubt you've built some resilience, and you mentioned thick skin. So, you know, from a silver lining point of view, there's a lot of really, really good things that have come out of all of the experiences that you've had, regardless of whether they've been good or bad.
Definitely, you know, and there's some, you know, always something strange. Like, just for an example, I bought a computer and probably used it 7 times a laptop just for presentations, and we just got back from America, and every time I opened up this laptop, everyone else's computers wouldn't work on the internet. And so we couldn't work out what it was. I actually reinstalled the whole computer program in the computer, I think it was 2 or 3 times, and then I got on stuff, but I went to call up the internet company. Long story short, the head internet provider for the company was also was an IT person, and he told me to plug the computer up to the modem. All of a sudden, it sounded like a siren go off on the computer, and all these numbers came up. Oh. And he said, "Can you give me the numbers?" And I recorded all this on video. I've got it all on video. And I gave him the numbers, and after about 10, 12 minutes, he goes, "I've never experienced anything like this. This is so intriguing." Like, he didn't know who I was, didn't know anything about me. He said, basically everything you're doing is uploaded on the computer. So basically everything that was on my computer was constantly uploading, and it went back to Sandia Labs in America, where the first atomic bomb was created. Huh. He said, that's why it's so slow. So he helped me fix the computer to the point of view of the modem. But what they'd done, they hijacked the modem and somehow teed it up just to work specifically on my computer, no other computer in the house. Mm. Wow. And I talked to computer experts about this, actually dudes that have got IT security computer companies that all they do is computer security. And they said they couldn't even pull that off. They said it must have been so complex that they wouldn't have been able to hack my computer the way this has been done. So there's a lot of people that are listening in on things, and it's not paranoia. I used to think it was, but then even recently I've got an IP address and it went back to NASA in California.
Wow.
That was, yeah. So there's a lot of people listening in, and, you know, at the same time, you know, it's not like I'm special or anything. I think they're trying to learn some of what I know. And I think the governments have been forthcoming, like, for example, Project Blue Book. They never said UFOs don't exist, which was a big investigation in they had Project Sign and Project Grudge and then Project Blue Book in America, and the Condon Report as well. And these were reports into the investigation in UFO sightings in America. And with Project Blue Book, they never said UFOs don't exist. They just said they weren't a threat to national security. And they said after that they shut down their UFO investigation program, which they got caught out in the light, because recently a heap of stuff came out of America in the last few years about them investigating reports still. And again, you know, they never said UFOs don't exist. They just said that they aren't a threat to national security. But I think some of them know what's going on, and I don't think it's the government per se. I think it's certain elite or individuals that do know. But when it comes down to it, you know, it's plausible deniability, saying we never said that they didn't exist. We just said they weren't a threat to national security, because who wants to admit they don't know what's flying around in their airspace, let alone picking up humans and doing whatever. And so if you look at those types of things, the governments have been looking well on this, and there's like hundreds of, you know, thousands of pages of documents that have also been released by the Australian government, the UK Department of Defence. Again, the Project Blue Book ones are now available in Canada, New Zealand, South America, France. The governments all around the world have released a lot of their UFO files. And I think part of it comes down to the multidimensional aspect. Like, how can this craft pop in and out of absolutely nothing? Like, when I've got these on video and thermal cameras and infrared cameras, these crafts absolutely disappear, which is impossible, because there still should be a heat signature, even if they're not there, like in terms of if they went stealth. But they're completely imploding on themselves and re-popping back out wherever they want or going, you know. So there's a lot here from science, and, you know, it does change the social economic status in terms of if they look at the energy from these devices, and I've seen some of the propulsion systems, and I've even seen free energy devices in America that give off no carbon emissions. They're 0 point energy, and they don't need any fuel. They just exist. You know, that would change how cars are run, how homes are run, the whole, you know, petro system with fossil fuels and all that. It changes everything. And so it does affect everything once you look into these types of things and technologies and healing devices. You can heal cancer, all these things. It would change the world overnight, plus it could turn deserts into utopias. So, you know, it's far-reaching. You know, when I start out with this, you know, it's so individually based, these experiences, but it does affect us not just individually, but also as a collective on so many levels.
Just on those sort of last things that you're mentioning about technology, do you think, and I mean, no doubt we could easily go down a rabbit hole with it, but I guess just sort of generally speaking, you know, for human civilization, and there's a lot of arguments about how long we've been around for, but, you know, in the last probably, well, I was going to say the last 50 years, but probably even in the last 20 to 10 years, the exponential increase and improvements in technology and what we're able to do. Do you see a link in that to what, you know, potentially, you know, people know about and what they've been learning from you know, these types of experiences? Do you think there's links there as to why we're suddenly in the last decade or so just exponentially just improving everything, our quality of life and technology?
It's two-sided. Some of it's got to do with our own consciousness, and they've actually found studies when certain things have been invented, other people on the other side of the planet have invented them, if not at the same time or just before or just after. So there is a conscious aspect as well. Also, things like the book Day After Roswell with Colonel Philip Corso, which is a New York Times best-selling book. This dude was in the military. He saw the crafts at the bodies at Roswell, saw UFOs, was in charge of Air Force bases, I think, or something at the time when they were flying over. His job, he was given a filing cabinet to put into human industries, I think or public industries, basically. He was getting something that most of the craft, they couldn't work out how the hell it worked. But what they could do, it was sort of like, let's see what similar we're working on already. So a life piece off one of the beings, they had this lens over them. I think they were biological. The beings weren't, they were like clones. But they pulled them off, and they apparently back-engineered night vision from that. There was fibre optics in the craft that they worked on later. There was lasers that they were already working on. It was almost like they were getting things that scientists at Bell Labs and other places were already working on, and they'll go and like, hey, can you use this? Can you start this? A lot of it was computer processing chips that the supercomputers couldn't even fathom. You know, they couldn't even do anything with for 20, 30 years. And so there's been things like this, but, you know, we also go back to how we still can't build the pyramids today and a lot of the ancient structures throughout human civilization. They're even finding ancient civilizations with amazing structures underneath the ocean that we cannot replicate today. And that's some of the top of the world's engineers saying that. And they did tell me that they started coming here 20 million years ago, putting outposts throughout the solar system and other areas. So they've given me a bit of information, but I think what it is there's a conscious aspect, and what the beings told me is that we will have access and create that which we've got the level of consciousness for a good reason, in terms of if you've got loving heart and good intent, you'll access stuff that is such amazing that we can't even fathom it. And so it depends on our level of consciousness, what we can pull out of the ethereal zone, I guess, of just nothingness and create from thought, just from ideas. But, we're doing a lot of amazing stuff already, going back to maybe the mid-2000s. They had, a long story short, there's this dude called David Adair, and I think it's 17. He actually went, maybe a couple of years before that, he walked into a room one day, and Stephen Hawking, before I think he was in the wheelchair, was there. This is going back years and years. And he had all these boards with equations on it, and this kid walked up and solved it straight away, and he was like, I've been spending my whole life trying to work this out. This dude, since he was like 12, was building rockets. Some of them one of them in particular had the interior of the rocket was hotter than the interior of the sun, and it was a plasma rocket. Usually they're liquid fuel or solid fuel. And he built this for the US government, and he ended up leaving that after he saw a flying saucer, replicated it, well, not a flying saucer, he saw a propulsion system that looked like two octopuses having sex in the bottom of Area 51 when he was flown out there. And the reason why they took him out there was a big version of his craft.
Wow.
His craft was about the size of a football. This was the size of a Greyhound bus, the propulsion system, and it must have flown something like the size of a football field. Massive. There was no wiring. He said he had miles of wiring in his. This thing had like fibre optic type stuff. He didn't know what it was at the time. Anyway, he left that, and the military would never get rid of him. But what he ended up doing was building, at 17, the world's fastest nuclear propulsion system for a submarine, which is still the fastest today. And this dude, I think he had to either go and help, or was telling a story about in the mid-2000s, they had to go and put blockers on one of the fighter jets because the mechanism to fire the missiles on the jet were done through his thought. And this dude went home, found his missus sleeping around, went back to work like a day or two, or I don't know when, and he flew the jet, and it kept on flying missiles, and they had to get him off the jet apparently because he was pissed off. So the jet kept on firing its missiles, and so they had to try and work out how to put a blocker on it because it fired through thought. And that's 2005. So you can imagine where we're at now.
Oh, yeah. I mean, even, you just go back 12 months and see what's changed in the world with technology, and it just continues to accelerate. And it's an exciting time, but depending on how you're looking at it, it can be quite nerving. And I think for you, and given all the experiences and the knowledge and the people that you've connected with over the years, you've got another level of, I guess, awareness or connection to all this as far as your interpretation and your experiences. So it's definitely an interesting time to be around.
It is, and it does come down to the person viewing their reality through their lens, because each person's going to interpret things differently. They're going to see things differently. There's going to be a lot of commonalities as well, but we're all in this together. And I think, as long as people are coming from a place that we don't know it all, and after how much I know now, each day I realise how little I know. Like, I know so much more than I did years ago, but I'm realising how much more and more little I do know, and that I learn more from people, just anyone I talk to. For example, even you, I learn things from every single person I speak to, whether it's a different point of view or opinion or actual something I learn from them that tell me that I've never heard, which is all the time. It's a never-ending journey on that side of things, that we're just constantly learning. No matter how much we think we know, we just don't know it all.
That's very true. Very true. Shifting gears just a little bit, but still keeping on topic. There's two books that you highlight on your website, and correct me if I pronounce these wrong, but it's the Book of Shi-ji. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay, so can you explain that? Because from what I could gather, one book, and I don't know if both books, or at least one, was written in a really short space of time. But I think if I get it right, you were channeling. Yeah,
so I'm very skeptical about anything. So I've learned when you do this, you've got to completely go automatic and just let what come out. Because sometimes you can be, and the documentary crew have been here and seen it happen, and they can feel the energy and it's everything change. And when you're doing that sort of stuff, you've got to, as soon as your human mind kicks in and you even start questioning or reacting to what you're writing, you've got to stop, because there's no use doing it, because it's not you doing it. So I basically had an experience where she said that she would start writing through, and all this information came through, and then she said in an hour a day for 9 days straight she would do it and write this information through that's going to help people help themselves, and it's only for those that come across it that are wanting to read it and wanting to learn about it. And so the first book's very up to date in terms of a lot of the conscious aspects, who we are, why we're here. But then the second book goes into, elaborates on that, and also how we've got where we are as a civilization and where we do come from on a multidimensional level, as well as throughout the universe. And so the information, a lot of it I can't remember because it's not me writing it, it just comes through. And so they're basically 2 books that have been channeled. There's been 8. Another 8. I pulled 8 down recently because I do want to revise them and go through stuff. And I really, at the moment, just wanted stuff out there that's going to help people, because the other ones were a lot more of a personal story, and I sort of want to combine them as well.
Okay.
Because it's just too much otherwise. Yeah.
It's I mean, going back to what I said right at the beginning when we first started chatting, I mean, this is one of the first things that I saw when I dug into your website, and just looking at all this content, I thought, geez, like, I mean, you've been busy, and it just, there's so much focus there as far as your intention, and we've touched on this before, but you know, the vulnerability of putting yourself out there and putting awareness out in the public domain. But you know, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm not in this world, so to speak, where I'm interacting with a lot of people that are having these types of experiences. But you seem to be just really sort of leading the charge with a lot of this stuff, and creating so much content for people, and knowing that you know, the website's only just scraping the surface as far as what you've put together, and even your music as well. And I had a look at PMAX and a couple of the videos on there, and there's an EP coming soon. But then mentioning before that you've done like 16 albums as well. It's just like, man, like it doesn't sound like you've ever slowed down in your life at all.
No, I'm still remastering a heap of albums and putting them up, and I just recorded a whole album in the last week as well, and mixed and mastered that and wrote it, you know, in that amount of time as well. So it doesn't stop. But what I've tried to do, especially with the UFO spiritual stuff, is I've tried to condense it down a lot more, because a lot of people have mentioned there's just too much content. It's too much for them to absorb. So I've sort of gone through the best of the basics and the I guess more in-depth stuff, and I've tried to simplify it. And that's what shi-ji does too with some of the information, is she's very got complex ideas and simplified them, because everything is simple. Even though there's a complexity to things, it can still be simple. And that's what I've tried to do recently with a lot of the content I've got, is to simplify it, because a lot of people have been following my journey. I get between 1 and 10,000 hits a day on that website.
Wow.
And so a lot of people are going there for a lot of information. But what happens is I do promote, and a lot of my stuff will lead you to other experiences and other people in other fields, whether it's aerospace or, you know, different science applications or spiritual studies or whatever. And so this isn't about me. I've made the Maxwell Slattery, the ET contact experience, a site where it is a one-place stop database that will lead you to sort of leave me and go and find yourself through not just me, but so many different types of people out there. Because when people might find out about me and then look at this stuff, but then they go, damn, look at all this evidence, look at all these people, look at all the cultures and things going on. And whether they go and look at stuff like the History Channel, Ancient Aliens, or whatever, they start to go on a journey going, you know, this is really intriguing. And that's what it's about, is helping people to go and find their own journey. And it's not about me, though. I have used the name, because what better name than just using your own name? You know, it's who I am, and it is the experience I'm having. So it's all about people finding themselves.
Well, I mean, I think it's a smart way of doing it, because, you know, you've got a I mean, to bring people to an awareness of any particular topic, you've got to connect with them first. And I think by putting yourself out there and putting your name against it all, there's a personal aspect where people can identify with you and what you're all about and your unique story. And then, as you said, like your website's a portal to so many other resources and other people and lots of different pieces of information. So you're creating that sort of open door for people to experience. But I think it makes complete sense that you put your name out there, because you want people get attracted to people, and you find connections and you identify with people, and that's the first step in creating more of a connection with people and spreading information.
Definitely, you've got to be able to put your name to stuff, and that's it's just part of the journey. All this, I'm still learning how I'm doing all this, and I haven't asked for any of this to happen. Like on a soul level, I have, but here during this Earth experience, it's just amazing how things happen and the people you meet and how one thing leads to another. As you would know with your own life, it happens to us all. So it's quite a journey indeed with it all.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm keeping an eye on the time, but there's one last thing I was going to pick your brain about, and I was going to ask it earlier, but I just kind of got sidetracked because there's so much stuff coming. But there's one video that you got embedded on the website, and I was really, really curious about it because it's the 20 drawings of the, I guess, beings that you've had contact with over time, and it's 20 of many that you've had experiences with. But I wanted to just get an understanding of, I guess, and this might be hard to articulate, and just given sort of what we've been speaking about, but I mean, how are these experiences, or how are these visions, or you're seeing these beings, and I believe your partner's been creating the drawings themselves. But how does that work? How are you able to get this experience, and how's that experience happening that it's then translating into being able to draw it, to sketch out this vision or whatever it might be? I'm struggling to find a descriptive word to.
It's a great question. Now, there is a couple of answers to it, because it depends on the being's vibrational frequency. I think somebody recently said to me that they worked out, or scientists now worked out, that humans vibrate at 17,000 times a second or something like that.
Wow.
Now, it all's got to do with consciousness and vibration. Everything's vibrating. Atoms are hollow. Everything's hollow. Everything's an illusion at one level. At the moment, we can only see a fraction of 0.5% of physical matter. The rest we cannot see. That's with our physical eyes. So we're only seeing a fraction, which is the coloured light spectrum of 0.005%. We can't see that includes the X-rays, gamma rays, infrared, and radio frequencies. We can't see that, and that's within the 0.5% as well. Yeah. So just one of the things with what my experience is, I'm known to have one of the most physical type contact cases on the planet, in terms of I can feel it, people can see it with me, whatnot. Now, my partner is very psychic, but this is just an example. We woke up one night and there was a being at the end of the bed that looked like a turtle, but it looked like between a turtle and a grey standing up. Now, she's got her eyes closed, facing the wall, and woke up and goes, "Pete, there's a being at the end of the bed." And I'm like, "How the hell do you know that?" I'm looking at it, because I was sitting up in bed looking at it when she said so.
Wow. She
wasn't looking at it with her physical eyes. Now, just bear with me and play with me a bit in terms of, how you could close your eyes and just imagine your car. Now, whatever colour your car imagine like you've got whatever car. Yeah. Now imagine that, say, what colour is your car, for example?
Grey.
All right, now imagine that same car blue. In your mind's eye, or yep. You could say in your mind's eye, but with imagination you can do things like that.
Yeah.
Well, these beings, through telepathy, will use your third eye or your imagination, and that's how they communicate with you. So you'll be asleep, and you know how when you've got dreams, you've got details?
Mm.
Now, if you can imagine them being able to communicate to you with a dream while you're awake, and so at the same time, I can be looking at you, talking to you, but they'll be projecting a vision in my head where you would see dreams and things like that. So what's happened is, sometimes when I've predicted where the crafts are going to be and that, I'm actually in my mind looking through the being's eyes on the craft, looking down at me when they come up, when they actually rock up.
Wow.
So there's like a mind connection, and sometimes it's like they shove a USB stick in your head and just download all this information. But sometimes the beings, so to get to it, sometimes the beings are actually physically manifested. like me in front of you.
Mm.
Sometimes they'll rip you out in your soul essence and your body will go on autopilot and they'll rip you and you've got like 360-degree awareness. Like you can't even see a physical body, but you can see things on the craft. Sometimes you'll be like something made out of light. It'll look like just a streak of light or rainbow iridescent light. And you've got 360-degree awareness consciousness depending on, you can even pin it down when you're directing your consciousness at certain things on the craft. But the beings, I've seen them rock up looking like lights. I've been able to touch them. Sometimes there's like smells or flashes of light coming in, or you'll see them vibrating like I mentioned earlier. But a lot of people seem to just get the telepathy where they'll be asleep or they'll be laying down meditating and all of a sudden with their eyes shut, it's like they're seeing just the reality as much as, you know, we are here now with our eyes open. So I'm sorry I've gone all over the shop, but it is very complex because it's not just one thing or the other. Like a lot of the ancient civilizations, they got a lot of information through meditating or they would have ayahuasca or try different types of things or chanting and dancing, and it would put them in this state with their body and their consciousness where they were able to connect through, you know, whether it was a dream time through, you know, in their mind, all the beings actually were physically there. It's very complex. So some of this is very physical. Sometimes they'll actually, and we've had groups where they've seen this and they've experienced it. So sometimes they will look like a ghost. And I've learned through a lot of the paranormal investigations I have done that some of the houses aren't haunted. They're having ET contact or spiritual contact experiences. And some of the people that think they're having ET contact experiences, their house is actually haunted. Oh. Now, we've had crafts that turn into an apparition. So if you can imagine a flying saucer turn see-through like a ghost, we've had it land on our bedroom and then they've pulled us into the craft, meaning they've changed our vibration, and all of a sudden we're in a craft that's solid and we're not in our bedroom anymore, but it occupies the same space and time.
Wow.
Now, later when I spoke to other Native Americans and Australians about this, they've talked about when they've said a lot of the time they aren't taking you to another place. What they do is they land the craft on you, like I just said, and they vibrate you into their reality. And you think you've gone to Orion or the Pleiades or another star system or you're in space. You're actually exactly where you are, but you're on a different frequency, and therefore them and the crafts become totally solid, and you can't even see your bedroom anymore, and then they'll vibrate you back out. So that's, you know, the stuff I didn't want to talk about for a while because, you know, people think this is all nuts and bolts, you know, and some of it is. But this is the real stuff and the real technology. As I said, some of these crafts are just they're created through either thought from light or they're grafted from the being and they're created and grown, whether in a light form or an organic form. Some of them are structurally metal or crystal type material. Usually they're a mixture of both. So it's very complex, but it's it's all over the shop.
Do you, I mean, I guess just because it's so varied and there's so many different sort of scenarios that could pop up, I mean, is it also the same with your personal feelings when you're going through these moments? Like, do you ever feel threatened? Do you feel at ease? Do you feel comfort? Is it a mixture of all sorts of different emotions depending on the situation?
That's exactly what it is. It just depends on that which you're interacting with or that's come through. I've had experience with reptilians. One group of them weren't too bad. They're actually telling me that their race cannot continue on the path that it is to evolve and that they're changing their ways. There's other reptilians that basically as weird as it sounds, I gave them a warning to leave my house with my family, or I was going to leave my body and we're going to go at it. And all of a sudden I wake up an hour later after seeing, I don't know what time it was, but it felt like it was about an hour or two later. And before I woke up, there was a reptilian at the doorway of the bedroom that would have been probably 7.5 foot tall with this black leather jacket on. Well, it looked like a black leather jacket with the collar up. And it wasn't too nice. I've seen these little things that look like greys, but they had reptilian eyes. And I didn't even sleep in my bedroom for an entire year during that experience.
Wow.
From that experience, I could go in the bedroom during the day and get my clothes out. I didn't sleep in there. I meditated every night for a year on my lazy boy couch in my lounge room because I just tried to clear the space and call the beings in to help protect me, because what they showed me, even the good beings showed me, they said, you have to know how to deal with this to help others, because they said, we're not always going to be there, and you know from your other lives how to deal with these guys, and they're going to keep coming after you because of what you're doing. And then they're only going to hurt you as much as you allow, but it's more of a psychic and energetic attack than anything. Mm. And as strange as it sounds, it does come down to a lot of stuff like Star Wars, like the Force. It's all through thought and the level of consciousness you're at, and where you direct your intention to that which you manifest or you can de-manifest.
Oh, well, I mean, it all comes from somewhere, doesn't it? I mean, far out. It's incredible stuff. And I mean, you mentioned, earlier in the piece, once you sort of take that step, it's very hard to go back. And even just listening to your experiences, I mean, I'll certainly walk away from this, really sort of thinking about a lot of stuff, and it's quite interesting. I think there's a whole different world there, and it's very intriguing. But I'm also just incredibly impressed with the amount of work that you put into this, and regardless of whether people believe or not, and their views and opinions, I think there's a lot of great things that you've done, I think, as far as putting the amount of time and effort and really stepping out of a comfort zone to spread awareness for something that you feel so passionate about. So, a lot of respect there for you and what you've done.
I really appreciate that. It means a lot. And, even with going away from this, people need to check out just even some things, just fun shows to watch, like UFO Hunters by the History Channel. You can find that on YouTube, or Ancient Aliens, little shows like that. They do investigations. They really could make anyone watch it, whether they believe it or not, and just, leaves them wondering. And that's what I want people to do, is just wonder, be open-minded enough just to wonder, because from there you can manifest not just experiences, but you can do amazing things with your family, with your friends. You can achieve things and do things that, beyond your wildest imagination, which is really, you create your reality from imagination and from thought. And all I want to do is make people think. If I died tomorrow, all I wanted to do is even make one person think, and I think it's all worth it.
Peter, wow. What a full-on Tuesday night.
Yeah, well, thanks for your time and wanting to interview. And it's been a long time since I've done anything like this. But it's been well worth it, and an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Thank you.
Take care. We'll speak soon.
You too. Take it easy, mate. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Whew. Jeez, what an episode, hey? If you want to reach out to Peter, you can go to petermaxwellslattery.com, or as always, with every single episode of the Antisocial Podcast, you can go to the show notes over at antisocial.net. I've got a bunch of links, photos, videos, everything in the show notes over there, as with every episode of the Antisocial Podcast. So go to antisocial.net and check all of that out. But massive thanks to Peter. I didn't walk away from that conversation any different. My beliefs haven't changed whatsoever, but I have a different level of respect for Peter. I think the guy is extremely pleasant. I really enjoyed chatting to him, and the work ethic that he has and the amount of time and that he pumps into his business is it's inspiring. It's actually quite motivating, and I think he's been able to create something really, really cool from his story, and people are getting value from it. And I think it's all coming from a good place, and from my opinion, or my perspective anyway. So regardless of your beliefs, so props to you, Peter, and thank you so much for taking the plunge and running the gauntlet with me with this podcast, because no doubt you have many challenges along the way when you talk to people in the public domain. So I appreciate you, taking the time to speak to me as well. Now, before we wrap it up, as always, if you want to support this podcast, you can leave reviews anywhere on the internet. I don't care. It doesn't matter. Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, anywhere. It doesn't matter. You can share these episodes around, a bit of social media love, liking, tagging, retweeting, love-hearting, whatever. Doesn't matter. You can buy merchandise, or you can chat me a beer via andysocial.net. You can buy some Lord merchandise. You could just suggest me some guests. So, this episode came from a guest suggestion, Daniel from Melbourne. So thanks again, Daniel, for the suggestion. And I'm always open to any suggestions, as this is a great example. So I'm very open-minded. So please reach out to me and let me know. But guys, thank you so much Thank you for supporting this podcast, interacting the way that you do. It is getting bigger and bigger, and I'm just really, really happy with the growth that this podcast is showing, and I'm getting so much out of this myself personally. So thank you very, very, very much. Before we wrap it up, 2 Lord shows for 2018, September 22nd in Melbourne at Max Watts. We're headlining the Metal United Down Under Festival, the Melbourne chapter of that, and we are also playing Saturday, November 3rd at the Bullface Stag in Sydney for day 2 of the Steel Assassins Festival. Day 1 is being headlined by Hobbs Angel of Death, which is fronted by Peter Hobbs, who's been on the podcast just recently, so you can go back a few episodes and listen to that. Both shows can be, tickets, let's speak in English, guys. Both tickets, tickets for both of those shows, can be purchased via lord.net.au or the show tab over at andysocial.net. Or Moshtix are selling tickets for both the shows as well. So if you guys get lost, just message me. I'll hook you up with the links and we'll work it out together. So before we wrap it up as well, selfstarter.com.au. So if you're into or have any interest or know somebody that's interested in small business, self-employment and freelancing, wants to earn a little bit of money on the side, escape the cubicle, create their own business, whatever it might be, you can go to selfstarter.com.au. There's heaps of content there. You can also find Self-Starter in whatever podcast player you are listening to this right now. So go and check that out. All right, that's enough. I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you so much. Another wild episode. I really, really enjoyed this one. And thank you so much for the ongoing support. It means a hell of a lot. And until next week, ta-ta.